Nadia Reyes had survived war zones that devoured stronger people whole. She had crawled out of burning vehicles, patched together wounded friends under mortar fire, and slept for months on sandbags that smelled of diesel and fear. She had returned from 7 deployments with 2 medals, a reconstructed shoulder, and an odd inability to flinch. What she hadn't survived, what she had never figured out how to endure, was her family. It was late December when the message came. She had landed at Cloud Harbor Municipal Airport hours earlier, her rucksack slung over one shoulder, her boots scuffed and worn from too many miles. She was finally home after 12 years of nonstop deployments, duty stations, and training cycles. 12 years of thinking about her family, telling herself someday she'd return and settle into a life where she wasn't always on high alert. She had walked into a cheap motel, dropped her bag on the carpet, and switched on her phone. One message, from her father. "Don't come home for the holidays. It's better if you stay away. We need space this year." That was it. No, we're proud of you. No, how are you feeling? Not even her name. Her father had texted her like she was a distant acquaintance who'd overstayed a polite invitation. Nadia sat heavily on the edge of the motel bed, the stiff mattress barely dipping under her weight. The heater clattered in the corner, pushing lukewarm air into a room that smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke. She had been prepared for awkwardness, for emotional distance, for the way her mother always wrung her hands when Nadia entered the room, as if afraid she might explode, for her father's brusque nods, his way of pretending she hadn't become someone he didn't understand. She hadn't been prepared for this. Her chest tightened, a strange mixture of anger and numbness settling over her. The kind of numbness she used to feel when she zipped up a friend's body bag. She stared at the message for a long time, so long the screen dimmed twice. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, mocking the silence in her throat. Finally, she set the phone down. Not thrown, not crushed, just placed, neatly, carefully, like evidence. Then she lay back on the bed, boots still on, staring up at the ceiling's water stains shaped like abstract continents. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years, not even when Lieutenant Park died in her arms, begging her to call his wife, not when shrapnel tore through her shoulder, and she lost the ability to carry a standard pack, not when she'd signed paperwork ending her military career. But now her eyes burned, a pressure built behind her sternum, the kind that threatened to crack her ribs open. She didn't want to feel this. Not over them. Not again. She closed her eyes and exhaled, long and slow, the way the therapists on base had taught her. Whatever this was, disappointment, rejection, betrayal, it didn't matter. She had survived worse than loneliness. She would again. Nadia spent those days gathering herself. She booked a small cabin near Silver Pine Lake, miles away from the farm, and ignored the texts her mother sent. "Sweetheart, your father didn't mean it that way. He's stressed. You know he gets like that. Let's talk after Christmas, okay? Lead temper's cool." There were no apologies, no invitations, just damage control. Nadia didn't answer. She found herself walking through snowy trails, breathing in crisp air that stung her lungs. The cabin was small but warm, its fireplace crackling and its wood-paneled walls smelling faintly of pine. She cooked simple meals, read books she'd packed years earlier and never opened, slept deeply, without the whine of drones or the rumble of convoy engines in the background, and for the first time in years she grieved. Not her childhood. She had long accepted that her family loved unevenly, lavishing her younger brother, Mateo, with indulgence while turning to Nadia only when they needed money, labor, or a sacrifice she couldn't afford. She grieved the hope that had silently carried her, through deployment after deployment. The hope that returning home would mean returning to belonging the next morning. Nadia woke early, the kind of early the army had carved into her bones. She showered, changed into clean clothes, and went through the practical motions of her life. She had nowhere to be, no orders to follow, no missions to prepare for. Her family's farmhouse sat only 40 minutes from the motel. She could have driven there. She could have shown up, knocked on the front door, and asked them to explain why, after sending her care packages when she was 18, after crying when she first deployed, after accepting her checks every time the farm needed another emergency repair. They no longer wanted her around. But she didn't go. Instead, she found herself driving toward the Cloud Harbor storage facility. Her family had told her years ago that anything she didn't take with her into the army would be tossed out, so she had packed her childhood belongings into 3 cardboard boxes and stored them under her own name. She hadn't opened them since. She didn't know why she was going there now. Maybe because she had nothing else to do. Maybe because she had spent her adult life serving people who never bothered to understand her. Maybe because she needed to hold on to something that wasn't rejection. The storage unit door squealed when she rolled it up. Cold air rushed out, along with the scent of old paper and dust. 3 boxes sat stacked neatly in the back. Her handwriting, crooked and cramped from her teenage years, marked each one. School. Personal. Lego. She almost ignored the last one. Lego. Probably old bank statements, vehicle titles, maybe the student loan documents she'd paid off long ago. But something tugged at her. A bad feeling. An intuition she had learned to trust. She crouched, slid the box forward, and opened it. She simply said, "You told me not to come home." So I listened. Her mother's face crumpled. Mateo looked away. Her father exhaled sharply as though deflating. Nadia handed them an envelope and continued. "You have 2 options. You can stay here and sign a tenancy contract, a legal agreement. Boundaries, responsibilities, compliance, or you can vacate by the end of January. I'm not forcing anything. I'm offering clarity. We're your family," her mother whispered. "You can't treat us like tenants." Nadia held her gaze. Softly, gently, painfully honest, she replied, "You treated me like nothing at all." A silence widened between them. And no one argued. Not once. Her father looked away first. Her mother's shoulders sagged. Mateo swallowed hard but said nothing. By the end of the month, they were gone. The house, her house, stood empty and silent. Her father's message echoed in her mind. "Stay away this year. Don't come home." A slow, controlled calm washed over her, the kind that used to settle over her right, before she kicked down a door. Not revenge, not anger, just clarity. Her parents had pushed her out of their lives without hesitation. It was time she stopped fighting for a place they had no intention of giving her. Nadia returned to the motel and sat at the small table near the window. Snow had begun falling outside, coating the parking lot in soft white powder. She took out her laptop, a rugged military-grade machine that had traveled more miles than she had, and powered it on. The cursor blinked on the blank email screen. She typed the name of the only lawyer she had ever interacted with, Evelyn Cho, a real estate attorney she'd met by accident when helping a friend purchase a home. Her message was short. "Attached is a property document I co-signed 12 years ago. I believe it grants me majority ownership of my parents' farm. I need clarity and guidance on how to formally assert my rights. Please advise." She attached a scanned copy of the agreement, clicked send, and sat back. Her hands didn't shake. Her breath didn't hitch. She felt steady, calmer than she had in days. Whatever came next would be lawful, measured, fair. She wouldn't lash out. She wouldn't destroy what little remained of her relationship with her family out of wounded pride. But she would no longer pretend she had no voice, no rights, no say. Her phone buzzed 20 minutes later. "Evelyn Cho. This is legally valid. You do, in fact, hold controlling interest. I recommend we proceed with an official notice of ownership rights and request a property compliance inspection. Are you prepared for the consequences?" Nadia typed back, "Yes," she meant it. 2 days passed. Cloud Harbor celebrated its annual winter parade. Children drank hot cocoa. Car horns honked. Music played from speakers strapped to lampposts. People lived full, warm lives. She realized she had been carrying that hope like a heavy pack long after its contents had rotted. On Christmas Eve, her lawyer emailed her a final draft of the Notice of Ownership Enforcement. It was direct, professional, and devoid of emotion. Her parents would receive it the next morning. She signed it electronically and closed her laptop. Outside, the lake glimmered under a pale moon, the ice thick and still. The world was quiet. She whispered the truth aloud, letting it settle into the room like smoke. "They told me not to come home." And for once, she listened. On December 27th, her phone exploded with calls. First her mother, then Mateo, then her father. She didn't answer any of them. She sat on the cabin porch in a thick wool sweater, sipping tea from a chipped mug, watching a pair of deer cross the frozen lake. Her father's voicemail came through after his 5th attempt. "Nadia, what the hell is this? You sent some letter claiming the farm isn't ours? Are you out of your mind? Call me back immediately." She didn't. The truth was simple. She wasn't taking the farm from them. She wasn't trying to hurt them. She was simply asserting what the law said, and giving herself the distance they had asked for. The next day, an inspector visited the Reyes farm. Nadia received an email summary. Unpermitted room rentals discovered. Safety violations noted. Non-compliant structural modifications. Her parents had been making money off illegal rentals for years. While telling the daughter, who owned 51% of the property, that she wasn't welcome to sleep there for a single holiday weekend, she set her tea down, hands steady. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence. On January 3rd, Nadia drove to the farm. Snow blanketed the fields, untouched except for tire tracks near the barn. The house stood tall and familiar, its paint peeling more than she remembered. Her father's old pickup sat in the driveway. Lights glowed inside. She parked, stepped out, and walked up the path. The cold bit at her cheeks, but she didn't pull up her collar. Her family opened the door before she knocked. Her mother looked smaller than Nadia remembered, wrapped in a shawl. Mateo stood beside her, hands buried in his pockets. Her father stood behind them all, jaw tight, eyes dark with anger or fear. Possibly both. No one spoke at first. Then her father said, low and clipped, "You didn't need to do this." Nadia didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse, she didn't defend. The house felt different without them. Not better, not worse, just different. Nadia stood in the doorway of the Reyes farmhouse, her breath visible in the cold air. It was early February, and although the snow outside had begun to thin, the house still carried the chill of abandonment. The furniture was gone. The walls were bare. A few nails stuck out where Mateo's childhood posters once hung. Her boots echoed across the hardwood floors as she walked deeper inside. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel vindicated. Mostly she felt tired. The kind of tired that seeped into her bones. The kind that came from years of being the dependable one. The strong one. The one who held the weight so others didn't have to. Her parents had moved out 3 days before the deadline. The truck had driven off without ceremony, without confrontation. Just a quiet retreat. Perhaps they'd gone to stay with Mateo. Or maybe they found another rental in town. She didn't ask. She didn't follow. She didn't chase after people who didn't choose her. The house was hers now, legally, practically, and emotionally for the first time. She walked into the kitchen, where the faint outline of a table remained like a ghost. She stood in the doorway for a moment, gripping the frame. This was where her mother used to sit with her back turned, pretending not to see her daughter limping from an injury she brought home. This was where her father used to flip through the mail, barely acknowledging the checks Nadia sent from overseas. This was where Mateo once joked that Nadia only joined the military because she wasn't good at anything else. There were memories in every corner, most of them heavy. She exhaled and whispered to the empty room, "You don't get to live here anymore." She wasn't talking to her family. She was talking to the past. Cleaning the farmhouse took days. Nadia worked with the kind of focus she had learned in the army. Systematic, methodical, unflinching. She cleared debris, patched holes, repaired cracked molding, and ripped out old carpeting with her bare hands. Every task felt like unraveling a knot inside her. She discovered old receipts stuffed behind the kitchen stove, evidence of years of under-the-table rental income. She found letters she had mailed home from deployment, still sealed, tucked into drawers as if her family hadn't bothered to read them. But beneath the dust and neglect, she found something else too. Possibility. She scraped the peeling wallpaper from the upstairs hallway, revealing clean white plaster beneath it. She stood back, wiped sweat from her brow, and imagined something new. Not a family home. Not a reminder of wounds. Not a monument to rejection. Something good. Something needed. Something she could build with purpose. The idea came quietly at first, like a whisper trailing on the tail of a memory. Then it grew louder. There were hundreds, thousands of women like her. Women who came home from deployments and had nowhere stable to land. Women who survived war only to be met with silence or collapsing support structures. Women who needed beds, counseling, community, and a door that opened instead of one that slammed shut. A home for women like her. A safe place. A beginning. Nadia stared at the blank wall and said aloud, "Reyes house." She shook her head immediately. No, that name belonged to the people who had turned her away. She didn't owe them anything. Not honor, not legacy, not space. She thought again. Slowly, a small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Haven Hearth. A place of warmth. A place of safety. A place of arrival. Yes, that felt right. Over the next weeks, Nadia threw herself into transforming the farmhouse. She used her savings from 16 years of service, hazard pay, re-enlistment bonuses, deployment stipends, to fund the renovations. Contractors came and went. Volunteers from the Cloud Harbor Veterans Group arrived with paintbrushes, tool belts, and casseroles. Nadia accepted the help cautiously at first. She wasn't used to people showing up for her without strings attached. But they kept showing up, every day, every week, and slowly she realized something strange and beautiful. Not all families were born. Some were built. She repainted every wall with warm, earth-tone colors. She converted the attic into a counseling room, with soft lighting and shelves. Filled with donated books, she transformed the basement into a shared kitchen with long tables and mismatched chairs that looked charmingly lived in. She added 6 beds in 2 upstairs rooms. Simple, clean, sturdy. She fixed the front porch railing herself, humming softly under her breath, feeling a sense of ownership in every nail she hammered. On the first day of March, she stood in the center of the living room. Sunlight spilled through freshly cleaned windows. The air smelled of pine cleaner and hope. The house was ready, but she wasn't. Not entirely. She walked out to the front yard, where patches of snow melted into muddy earth. She lifted her face to the cold breeze and whispered, "It's okay to begin." Her voice sounded small, but it was steady. The first woman arrived on March 12th. Her name was Lila Booker, a former Air Force mechanic who had spent 6 months living in her car after escaping an abusive relationship. Evelyn Cho had connected her to Nadia, explaining privately that Haven Hearth was ready for its first resident. Lila stood on the porch with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, her eyes wary and exhausted. This is really free?" she asked, voice cracking. Nadia nodded. "No rent, no judgment. Just respect and boundaries." Lila blinked rapidly, then stepped inside. Nadia watched her wander through the house, touching the walls gently, as if afraid they might disappear. That night, Lila slept for nearly 15 hours. The second woman arrived 2 weeks later. The third came in April. By early summer, all 6 beds were full. Nadia cooked meals for them. She held late-night talks when someone woke from a nightmare. She drove 2 residents to job interviews and picked up another after a panic attack. They laughed together, shared stories, cried in quiet corners. The house was no longer empty. It was alive. One evening in late June, as the sun dipped below the tree line and cast orange light across the porch, Nadia sat with Lila and another resident, Sarah. They sipped iced tea and listened to cicadas whining in the trees. Lila glanced over at Nadia and said quietly, "Thank you for this, for giving us a place to land." Nadia swallowed hard. Her instinct was to deflect, to shrug it off, but instead she said softly, "I built what I needed. Turns out other people needed it too." Lila reached over and squeezed her hand. Nadia didn't pull away. Her family didn't contact her for months. No calls, no apologies, not even accidental run-ins in town. The silence was strange, like a missing tooth her tongue kept poking, but not unwelcome. She learned to live without waiting for recognition that would never come. But on the first snowfall of November, nearly a year after they told her not to come home for the holidays, she received a letter. No return address, handwritten, shaky pen strokes. "We heard about the project. The sentence scratched out. "We're glad you're doing something meaningful." Another scratched out line. "We hope you're okay. Dad isn't well. He's quieter these days. We won't bother you again. Mom." Nadia folded the letter and put it in a drawer, not out of sentiment but closure. Some wounds didn't heal. Some relationships didn't mend, and that was okay. Compassion didn't require access. Forgiveness didn't require reconciliation. She didn't light a candle for them. She didn't mourn the distance. She simply moved forward. On December 25th, exactly, 1 year after she read her father's rejection text, Nadia stood in the living room of Haven Hearth. A small Christmas tree glowed in the corner, decorated by the women staying there. Laughter echoed from the kitchen where Sarah and Lila tried and failed to bake gingerbread cookies without burning them. Nadia held a candle in her hands, a tradition she was starting for herself. She lit the wick carefully, watching the flame bloom into life. It flickered softly, casting warm light across her face. She whispered, "For the woman I was, for the woman I am, for the woman I'm becoming." Not a prayer, not a wish, just a truth, a quiet, steady truth. She set the candle down on the windowsill. Outside, snow drifted across the yard in gentle swirls. Inside, warmth radiated through every room. a warmth she had built with her own hands. Her own strength, her own heart. Haven Hearth was full. She was full. And finally she was home. Not because her family welcomed her, but because she created a place where she belonged.